Hello, everyone. We are going to wait just another minute or so to let people continue to trickle in, and then we'll get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm sure folks will continue to join us over the next few minutes, but yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Murdoch Trust's Education and Leadership Development Funding Priorities webinar. My name is Jenna Watson, and I'm Communications Associate at the Murdoch Trust. I'm here today with Pauline Fong, Chief Program and Impact Officer and the lead for the Education and Leadership Development Focus Area, and Elaine Charpentier-Philippi, Acting Program Director for Education. Pauline and Elaine are our team for Education and Leadership Development, or what we call ELD for short. Before we dive into today's content, I want to share a few announcements. We do have live captions available for today's conversation. So to turn those on, click the three dots near More on the top of your screen, then Language and Speech, then Show Live Captions. Next, today's session focuses on our current funding priorities and eligibility guidelines for strategic project grants within the ELD focus area ahead of the submission window opening on March 9th. This webinar will cover strategic projects only, so that's capital, equipment and technology, and program and staff. And we will not be covering Murdoch Trust programs or initiatives. Next, if you have not had a chance to watch our general grant making updates webinar from March 2nd yet, we highly encourage you to check it out. In that session, Pauline walks through some general eligibility updates, adjustments to submission windows, and important context on why we're focusing our funding priorities. So to give you just a bit of background in case you missed that session, in our last submission window, we received more than triple our historic average number of LOIs, or letters of inquiry. And while we wish we could fund every nonprofit that applies, our funding capacity just doesn't allow for that. So what we can do is make sure nonprofits have as much clarity as they can from the start about what they're eligible to apply for, which is a big part of why we're focusing our funding priorities and offering these webinars. We're also working hard to share resources and tools that can be useful to a broad range of nonprofits, not just those we're able to fund. So we'll include the general grant making recording and some of those resources in a follow-up email. But for today's session, here's a quick agenda. Pauline and Elaine will present on ELD funding priorities and guidelines. Then we will address some pre-submitted FAQs from registration, and then we'll open it up for live Q&A. So please be submitting your questions in the Q&A box throughout. All right, Pauline and Elaine, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenna, and welcome everyone. We are glad that you are here on this webinar. First, I just want to thank all of the folks who are on this call and all those who will view the video later. For all who are engaged in nonprofit work, I know there are some trustees, there are volunteers, there are staff, there are EDs, program directors, all of you who engage in nonprofit work. I just wanted to first say thank you. Your passion and your compassion really helps to make this world a better and a different place. And so thank you for that. As we begin this webinar, I would like to briefly just connect everything we're about to cover today back to the Trust mission, which is to build capacity in nonprofits driving innovative and sustainable outcomes across the Pacific Northwest toward the Trust vision of human flourishing for the common good. So we're going to go into a lot of details in the webinar, and it's really important to ground all of these details discussions in this mission and vision that are inspired and informed by the Trust benefactor, Jack Murdoch. For more details about this mission and vision that I don't have time to go into here, as well as the Trust values and information on Jack, please visit the About Trust page on the Trust website. So in this webinar, we're going to focus on the trust's priorities in the area of education and leadership development. And so I'd like to first provide a high-level overview of this focus area to help set the stage. Education and leadership development, what we call ELD for short, is one of the 5 areas of focus at the trust. And connected to the trust vision and mission, grant making in this area specifically is aimed towards the following 3 aspirations. So these are what we hope would become true as the trust invests in nonprofits in the education and leadership development space. The first aspiration is we hope that solutions for education and solutions for future of work are accessible and unleash equal opportunities for all. Our second aspiration is that education and the future of work efforts are innovative, adaptive, and center collaboration. And the last aspiration that we have for this area is that nonprofits are connected and resourced to tackle complex challenges. This focus on education and leadership development really goes back to our benefactor, Jack Murdoch. Jack was a lifelong learner himself, and he was a thoughtful and an intentional leader. He cared deeply about investing in education, strengthening leaders, and igniting generosity. So that's what this focus area funds. Also, a quick note, while we're going to cover very specific eligibility guidelines for ELD organizations and projects, all general eligibility requirements still apply. So please do read those on our website. Some of you attended the webinar I did yesterday on general eligibility, during which I highlighted the extraordinary grant demand that the trust has been experiencing, which makes it even more important that we are clear about what the trust's priorities are, because clear is kind and clarity is respect. And so this webinar recording will be made available on the website later as well. Next thing is I like to clarify a few terms so that you'll know what they mean when you see them listed in an eligibility guideline, or as we refer to that in this presentation. So if we say something is on pause, that means it's temporary on hold while we continue to refine our strategy and conduct further research in order to determine eligibility. If we say something is deprioritized, then that means we're not funding it actively at this time. If something is eligible, it is not eligible for funding, and so a letter of inquiry or LOI would not be considered. You'll see a summary of how we break down this focus area into 2 different sectors, education and resource social sector. And within each of those sectors are quite a few subsectors. We only share this so that you can understand how we organize things on the back end, and you can interpret the language as we use throughout this presentation. All right, so now it's time to walk through the ELD eligibility guidelines, and I'm going to pass it off to Elaine to start us off with the education. Elaine?
Thank you, Pauline. And I echo Pauline's gratitude for everybody on the call today and for the work that you're doing in community. Thank you. So first up, for secondary schools and secondary education support, the types of organizations and projects these guidelines are highlighting are those that amplify relevancy for middle school students and build purpose and connection for high school students. When we talk about projects that promote STEAM, we're really looking for those that increase a students' understanding of the relevance of math, science, and technology, engineering, and art to their future in ways that are hands-on and inform how they think about a future pathway. Projects that encourage innovation and entrepreneurship and develop 21st century skills. These are projects that seed opportunity for innovation and entrepreneurship. Those that nurture skills of adaptability, problem solving, and ways of thinking. In all of these, we are interested in projects that help students build ideas about what they like to do, what they think they're good at, and how they want to participate in their communities. These tenets are core to career-connected learning and future of work projects. And for projects that support transitions, what we're looking for here is for you to talk about how the project supports key transitions that data shows are critical to helping students persist or complete. The cross-sector collaborations piece really embodies that data shows that projects targeting outcomes in these areas can be strengthened by public, private, and social sector collaborations. These deepen impact through reach and often illustrate the multiple ways that students learn. And again, our overall goal here, as Pauline mentioned earlier, is that our guidelines are representative of who Jack was as an entrepreneur, business leader, and community member. When we look at the secondary schools and secondary education support guidelines on this slide, what we're really looking at are guidelines that are specific to private and independent schools and public charter schools. The preferences listed on this slide acknowledge that student access and overall fidelity and governance at the board level are important to the trust. Access and stewardship were values that Jack embodied also. He shared publicly that he believed it was the burden of all of us in community to be sure that folks didn't get left behind. Specifically, when being left behind limited a person's economic mobility and ability to flourish. In the post-secondary project space, we are limiting projects to technology and equipment or program expansion. And please note that if you're submitting an LOI for a project in this space, only projects that impact rural, Native Indigenous, and first-generation students and those that support those critical transitions from high school to post-secondary and post-secondary to career are eligible. The guidelines in this area really aim to fund projects that impact the economic mobility of adults in the Pacific Northwest and prioritize access for those that navigate barriers to post-secondary education and careers. And then finally, in the four-year institution space, this is a shift for our four-year institutions from the president's highest priority to this strategic project alignment with one of the Trust 5 focus areas. This is intended to deepen the impact of the strategies and the outcomes of the focus areas that the project aligns with. And when you visit the website for eligibility guidelines under education, you'll notice that each of these focus areas have a jump link. So you'll be able to easily transition from where you're at in the education guidelines to that specific focus area to understand how your project might align with work in that area. We really want to acknowledge that you need to call out the area the project aligns with when you submit an LOI and how it will further or bolster the outcomes in that focus area. And also it's important that your LOI would demonstrate department and university leadership support. We also think it's important to note here that the projects that address the future of higher education are a priority for the trust. So when we think about the AI durability of future careers for learners who are entering the workforce and the ways that higher ed is thinking about addressing things like the enrollment cliff and fewer college enrollments and the ways that that is impacting our university partners, those projects are a priority for us as well. So we want to note that there are some specific changes that are new in this recent update of guidelines. To close, we are pausing early learning and elementary education funding for 2 years. This is necessary both to manage volume, but also it helps us to increase our learning and supportive work that is building relevancy and purpose for middle and high school learners, and that prepares young adults for an AI integrated world and the impact that is having on jobs and economic mobility. We also want to acknowledge that early last year, we shifted our focus in education to prioritize projects with career connected and future of work learning outcomes. That really does kind of thread throughout what we're doing and looking for in the education guidelines in a focus on who is that person going to be when they enter workforce and how will they show up in their community, things that are very important to the trust. And then also just a reminder again that our post-secondary grants prioritize projects impacting first generation rural and Native and Indigenous learners, and that expand those AI durable jobs and advance economic mobility. I would also offer that as you consider drafting your LOI, it's important to know if your project aligns with more than one of the outcomes in the guidelines, tell us that. Alignment to outcomes is one of the ways we evaluate the LOIs and the projects that are coming in. So if there are multiple ways that you align, we encourage you to say so. That covers changes and updates we wanted to share for education. And now I'll turn it over to Pauline to talk about the resource social sector.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. So the other part of ELD is resource social sector. And what we mean by that is in this sector, we partner with nonprofits who work towards igniting generosity and developing leaders so that the social sector, the nonprofit sector, and nonprofit leaders are connected and resourced to tackle complex challenges. And so in the sector includes organizations that are like, first of all, community foundations. So community foundations really do multiple things, ignite generosity, and often they're capacity building as well in their local context. And so the guidelines specifically related to those who are community foundations is that, first of all, we do not fund requests for scholarships, and really our priorities is fund new staff or new capacity building type of initiatives that really help you grow your capacity and your impact. And then the second one is leadership development. And again, we're focused on capacity building because that's really our mission and that's our North Star. And so the trust will prioritize those projects and organizations that actually strengthen the technical competencies through skill building, collaborative decision making, and then really fostering the alignment and partnerships between and amongst leaders. And so priority will be given to projects that cultivate cross-sector relationships and collaborations through our cohort framework. The other thing to consider if you're in the leadership development space is that we generally focus on projects that are focused on program or staff expansion in this space. There are a couple of other spaces within this area that are by invitation only, and one is generosity support, so organizations who are really focused on supporting and igniting generosity, and the secondly is supporting philanthropy. So those are by invite portfolios in the sector. I think that's it for us on resource social sector. And so that's what we wanted to highlight. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Jenna.
Great. Thank you, Elaine and Pauline. We received quite a few questions during registration, so we've selected and grouped those together to address now. So one question we got in a couple different forms is the Trust willing to consider funding international leadership development projects?
That's a great question. And I would say that while the Trust is always interested in learning more about leadership development projects, even in including the international space, what I would offer is that for an LOI to meet the strategic project guidelines is that you would need to be able to demonstrate that there's 50% Pacific Northwest impact. And by that, we mean that there would be 50% impact in Idaho, Montana, Alaska, Oregon, or Washington, or a combination thereof. Those are our funding priority states.
Great, thank you, Elaine. What are the criteria to be considered for program expansion from an already developed program?
Sure. I think one of the ways that you might be able to demonstrate capacity building within a program that's already developed would be to show us that it increases staff FTE by a minimum of 0.5 FTE or 1 FTE. 0.5 is the minimum. And also that it increases impact, either extends impact to a new population or increases a state footprint or maybe multi-state. But those would be one of the ways I think that you could demonstrate that it's capacity building for the organization.
Great, thank you. And then last common question we got from registration, would trust funding support initiatives that strengthen long-term program quality, such as staff training and skill development?
So in projects that are supporting and expanding current staff, we would look at that, potentially as the professional development or skilling up of staff. Those types of projects are currently ineligible.
Great, thank you, Elaine. That's really helpful. Now we'd like to open it up for your live questions. We've been receiving quite a few throughout the session, but if you have a question, please use the Q&A box now at the top of your screen to submit it. We've got one from Laura. Laura asks, if education is on a 2-year pause, then does that mean they will reopen in 2028? Do we have specific dates yet?
Oh, thank you for that. So for early childhood education and projects that impact elementary school students or elementary education support, the 2-year pause is really for that investment in research and understanding how we can maximize the trust impact, specifically when we think about future of work, AI durable jobs, and who is that citizen who's completing post-secondary work and then entering the workforce. While we don't have a definite commitment for when that will reopen, we will continue to like the ongoing examination of that will be a commitment that we have with the intention that that would be lifted in 2 years.
Yeah, I might just add that what you can count on is there will be updates about those on the trust website. So revisit the website occasionally to really check on that. A pause really is we're pausing to research the strategy, and because we're really thinking and really trying to not have preset conclusions going into that, is really actually hard to know what will come out on the other end. So I just want to make sure we're not over setting the expectation in terms of that we will reopen in 2 years. We actually don't know that because we don't actually know what we'll find in the research or in the strategy development. But you can visit the website from time to time to check on the update. And as soon as we know, that is our commitment. If we know, we will post that on the website right away.
Thank you both. We have a great question from Patricia. Patricia asks, does a strategic initiative need to address all of the criteria for the focus area or simply one or more? For example, serve Indigenous peoples and transitions, or just one?
That's a great question. The requirement is that it meets one of the outcomes, but I would say, as I shared earlier, if it meets multiple outcomes, then say so. Because I think that as a project increases its alignment with what's posted in the eligibility guidelines, it increases alignment and fit with what could be a very competitive LOI batch, and we have no way of knowing what will come in from batch to batch or at any given time. So that's why we just encourage you to say, if it meets more than one outcome, tell us that.
Great. A question from Rachel. Is there any wiggle room regarding the minimum students enrolled, or are smaller schools truly ineligible? Our school supports our entire region by enrolling those students who are not being served by public schools.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and one that we think about often. For now, the state minimum requirements of 200 and 150 students are fixed.
Great. Pia has a question about which focus area their organization would fall under. So Pia says, I work for a classical youth orchestra. Do we fit under education at all? Our mission is to provide classical music education and performance opportunities for young people in the Inland Northwest.
That's a really great question. I think that when it sounds to me just from hearing the brief description of the organization that it might be a better fit with artistic and cultural expression. So I would encourage you to visit their eligibility guidelines on the Trust website. They do have a focus on education in the arts and culture space. The education guidelines for as they're listed on the site for ELD really are specific to more of that skills development, 21st century skills, and future of work.
Yeah, it does fit with we actually do work with quite a few youth arts related education nonprofits, so that definitely fits with artistic and cultural expressions. And I think that webinar is tomorrow. Or yeah, it is
Yes.
tomorrow. And so that might be a great webinar for you to attend or to watch afterwards. And there's a different set of guidelines for those organizations. So that's why we're trying to really be clear about what's the outcome coming from different organizations and how that aligns with trust priorities. So artistic and cultural expression has a different set of outcomes and priorities. So I would really suggest that you check those out. And it's on the website as well. So check those out.
Great. Cassie asks, if we are a private school that is K through 8, would we still be able to apply elementary as well?
Yes, I think that particularly if the project that you're bringing to the trust focus on outcomes for middle school students, so those grades 6 to 8, that would be considered eligible for a strategic project.
Okay, and Katie is wondering, our community college started offering bachelor's degrees 5 years ago. Can we apply as a 4-year institution?
I would say that if your project aligns with I could see that going both ways. I could see you aligning with community college guidelines, depending on the type of project that it is, and as well as the 4-year institution. So I would say look very specifically at the guidelines and for alignment, and just be very clear when you submit your project.
All right, Pat is asking, can you please expand on the tuition-based financial aid factor for awarding grants?
Sure. I think, Patrick, what I'm hearing you ask is what is that about, or can we provide some guidelines on how that weights with a project when it comes in under LOI? And I would say that, again, the tuition preference, that threshold of 20%, is truly just about accessibility. We believe that equitable, equal access to private independent schools is important, and it embodies both Jack Murdoch's values and values that we hold for private and independent schools. It is not, something that will eliminate a project's eligibility before the trust. It just is a preference. And so it is something that we consider depending on the number of LOIs that come in during a specific period and the number of independent schools that are in that projects that we're considering in any given period. Those are all things that can weigh on the final decision. But again, that's definitely a preference, but it is not an eligibility guideline that would knock a school out.
That's really helpful. And I think maybe a similar question about weighting different guidelines. Patrick asks, can you please explain more about how you define first generation as a point of alignment?
Sure. First generation specific to the community college guidelines are when it's the first learner in a family to be going to college. That's how we define that. Pursuing post-secondary.
Great. Laura asks a very important question. To clarify then, there is no educational funding available at this time, either for elementary or post-secondary. Can you clarify?
So I can affirm that the elementary education funding is on pause, but post-secondary is eligible and listed underneath the guidelines. So we are accepting LOIs and projects for community colleges, vocational, trade programs, and the guidelines are on the website.
Yes, so it's just early learning and elementary that is on pause, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, good clarification, Laura. All right. Another question about which focus area someone falls into. Sarah is asking, would children's museums fall under education support or arts and culture?
Children's museums fall under artistic and cultural expression.
Great. All right. Erica is wondering, may an institution submit LOIs in multiple priority categories during the same funding cycle? For example, a strategic grant in education and leadership development and arts and culture, or are submissions limited?
Submissions are limited to one focus area per grant cycle.
Yeah, due to the extraordinary volume that we have to manage, we can only take one LOI per organization per cycle.
Great. All right, probably have time for one or two more questions. We're getting plenty of them coming through. Let's see, Holly is asking an eligibility question. Is an organization based in the Pacific Northwest eligible to apply for staff expansion if their impact is national, i.e. greater than 50% impact in the PNW?
And so if I'm understanding that right, Jenna, they're asking if there is greater than 50% Pacific Northwest impact, is the project still eligible even though they're national?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, then the answer to that would be yes.
Great. All right. We're seeing lots of great questions coming in. Unfortunately, we won't have time to address them all in this session because we're nearing the end of our time today. But if you submitted a question that we did not have a chance to address, please email that question to grants@murdochtrust.org and a grants team member will get back to you. Now, just a few quick reminders as we wrap up this session. Within a few days, you'll receive a follow-up email from us that will include the recording of today's session, the link to the general grant making session we talked about, a list of some resources, and a link to a brief post-webinar survey. We would really encourage you to complete that survey. Your feedback helps us to improve these sessions and make sure we're providing the information you need in the most helpful way possible. Thank you so much, Pauline and Elaine. Most of all, thank you everyone for joining us and for all the ways you support our region through your work in education and leadership development. Have a great day, everyone.